Hello. I just spent about a week altogether with my grandson and my daughter Rachel, and in San Francisco, and that was really a wonderful time. But the subject of my talk is sort of some of the things that I observed in there that I didn't in San Francisco that I didn't think was so great, that I've been aware of for some time, but I didn't know how invasive it was. And that basically amounts to the education that kids are getting very young. My grandson is 4, so we went to the Science Museum, which is geared for young kids like the parents, which can have fun there too, but it's mostly for younger, inquisitive young minds. And that would begin probably a year or so earlier than my grandson, 3 or so, until 13, 14. So there was an exhibit that you spin a wheel, and there's hundreds of things on each wheel. There's 3 wheels where you choose what attracts you. And there's different kinds of dresses, different kinds of shirts for clothing, different kinds of shoes, different kinds of hats, etc. Then there's trucks and dolls and balls and so forth. And then there's places, like beaches, flower gardens and so forth. And then you spin the wheel and you kind of line up yourself with, what your preferences are. At the very beginning, it explains to the young child that when you're asked what you are, check the box male or female. That doesn't mean anything. That what really means something is what you identify yourself with. So then, you spin the wheel, and then you figure out, oh, well, gee, I thought I was such and such, but now I discovered that according to this thing, I'm such and such. Well, this is okay for those that, know what they are. But for, a 4 or 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old, it could lead to some confusion. And that confusion could go really deep. When I was 4 or 5, I still remember some of my friends and stuff. And when we played together, and some, not all kids that are boys like trucks, and not all girls that are girls like dolls. But then when you call this into question at a very young age, it can have really dire consequences. Anyway, needless to say, I thought that was all inappropriate. The next thing was when we went to the airport, a very similar thing. There was a video room for kids. In the video room for kids, you had a choice of 4 different videos. One was really great. I watched it with my grandson. It was about a Mexican family and how hard they worked and how they made everything by hand and sold it themselves and lived that way. And it followed their lives, making things, marketing things, and so forth. But one of the 4 videos was similar to the spinning wheel at the Science Museum, but this one was a movie. And it illustrated a young girl who was always accustomed to playing bare-chested, riding her bike bare-chested and everything else, like many 4, 5, 6-year-olds do when it's hot. But then after she, grew a little bit, everyone was telling her to put on a shirt. Then she couldn't decide which kind of shirt she wanted, and so similar to the spinning wheel, all of these, the video shows her trying to choose the right kind of shirt. So she goes through all the boys' shirts and girls' shirts and so forth. And she likes this boy's shirt. Then she grows up a little more, being a tomboy. And then she really doubts whether she's really a girl. And the video concludes with her visiting her doctor to get advice. And of course, she ends up getting surgery. And so then I'm sitting on a subway, a BART, and the topic, a billboard is there. How should I feel about being someone who introduces another to their first queer experience? And then the answer is, if you have any questions about these things, here's the number to call, or scan this barcode and we'll help you out. Needless to say, all of this is very pervasive now. Everybody knows it. But the thing is, where's it all going? And what I'm talking about is not really what I would consider the most invasive thing on a young person or even an adult mind. The most invasive is the matter of language. Having hours to kill at the airport, where I spent some time, I watched a really great video, Canadian teacher, I believe, talking to in a discussion with someone that had a very different orientation than he did. And he was a professor at a university, and he objected to a vast vocabulary that he was supposed to learn in order to address his students properly. Well, he objected to the school, and I don't know whether he got fired or not, but he may have, but it caused a huge scandal in the whole school because he objected to uses all of these things. And the person that was his debating partner, that on the other side of the wall, was saying, well, you learn all your students' names and phone numbers, can't you learn any of the 32 or whatever it is pronouns, or sir, Mrs., sir, them, that, so forth, that goes along with the diversity of the people in your classroom. And he said, well, it's just too much to remember. And then he said, in a matter of fact, I don't know everybody's phone number by heart, nor not even their names. But he said that's not the main point, the reason I objected to it. The reason I objected to it is it's because an infringement on my free speech. And I should have a right to speak to people as I please, as long as it's in accordance with social norms. And so this is really the heart of the problem, because this professor is being denied the right to teach if he doesn't accord with what a certain group of people are considering social norms, which many do not consider social norms at all. And they believe that, most people believe that proliferation of terms is unnecessary. And this is not just a recent view. It goes back to, a couple of thousand years, or 1,000 years or so, when, it was pretty much decided that the fewer terms to refer to specific things is the best, because it creates less confusion. So if you can do it without loss of precision in one's speech, it's best to have as few terms as possible. So his objection was that basically whatever people want to be called is fine with him, but it shouldn't be forced on him or anyone else to call them by such and such. And so it's not just a matter so simple as how to address people. You know, it's confusing enough that you do have to do that, but what's behind it all? Well, what's behind it all was predicted long ago. I think it was either Orwell or Aldous Huxley said that the undermining of our society will begin with language. And we're languaging beings. You know, we all language. That's what we do. We communicate with one another through language. And you take a word like virtual reality, you know. So today you talk to any 6, 7-year-old or 10-year-old, they're very well aware. Oh, virtuality, yeah, virtual reality, yeah. You know, it's like saying tree or rock or something. It's a common word in our vocabulary, and it's accepted. You know, it's part of the fabric of our society. And there are many words like this. You know, I don't know how many hundred are introduced to the dictionary every year, but probably quite a few. And these words become, and phrases become second nature to us, and we accept it. So what's going on with the introduction of a bunch of words that are demanded upon, ordinary citizens to use in order not to offend anyone? But it goes more deeply than that. You know, how do we want to, by our own language, myself and everyone else, want to mold our society by what's acceptable in our society? How do we want to use our language to develop our society for the future generations as we would like to see it develop? You know, so if we accord with the demands of certain minority groups to do as they wish, those groups will be accepted because of the vocabulary. There's words for that. And then we just say, like, oh, that's a virtual reality game. Oh, but and everybody knows what that is and accepts that. And the same will be true with a lot of different things that might not be so simple as what I'm speaking about. You know, social norms, ethics, morality, and so forth, and the stability of our society as a whole. So the power of language is seen recently with Putin. You know, he doesn't want to call it a war. He's educating his population to call it a strategic, I forget what he said, a strategic move or something, and not using the word war is, ostensibly as people can rest in peace, that they're not really inviting a war, or causing a war or anything else. It's a strategic initiative or whatever he said. So the power of speech is a great power indeed. Words work magic, and they can work to undermine an entire society and the people's, basic norms. And it can destroy lives because of causing confusion, like some of the exhibits that I saw on this recent trip, where I accompanied my 4-year-old to various places, can really undermine and confuse a young mind that's very influential and just growing into himself. It can create really terrible wrong views. So how do we escape all of that? Well, the simplest explanation I saw was when I watched this video where this Mr. Peterson, Professor Peterson, was debating another person, and he attacked the whole scheme on his right to free speech, which is really true. Why should someone force a vocabulary on a population? It's okay if they want to use a population like they do in Hawaii and other places as pidgin English, so to speak, pidgin whatever, wherever. There's so many hybrid languages. People don't demand that you speak them. If you want, you can speak it amongst themselves. So if minority groups want to speak the language amongst themselves, that's great. Let them do so. Who cares? But when they enforce that on others, that's where it causes a problem, and that's where it causes a problem with myself, and I think a lot of others, because we should take heed that we are indeed languaging beings. How we use our language is very, very, very sacred, and it's our most powerful sense of identity, our words, our language. And it's the key to protecting the society from degenerating from within, literally from within itself. And so these are some of my thoughts from my recent visit with my daughter and my grandson, who, by the way, are back in Portugal, safe and sound, having arrived 2 days ago. And they will live there permanently, and because they love it.